Hi guys, and welcome to CFE TV. We're back. It's the big one, big Sunday clash against Newcastle. Uh, Roll the towels. So, hi guys, welcome to CFE TV. Like I say, it is the big one on Sunday. It's a 6-pointer without a shadow of a doubt. But we have got a Newcastle fan in the house. We have got Sharkey from at Toon Army TV. How you doing, mate? You all right?
Evening, mate. How's it going? You good?
Yeah, I'm smiling now, but come Sunday, I don't think this will be on my face. I'm not. I'm not.
Ah,
I'm not confident. I'm not confident at all.
I'm trying to feel confident. I've got that sliver of hope that this could be the game where we'll finally turn things around and we can get 3 points and then maybe kick on and get some points against the so-called bigger six clubs. And then hopefully we're not sweating on the last two games of the season when we play Sheffield United, our last home game, and then we play Fulham. I want us to be, home and dry by the time, those two fixtures come around. But Newcastle, typical Newcastle fashion, we'll probably go to Turf Moor and Steve Bruce will set up for a classic 0-0 draw, hoping that Ashley Barnes or Chris Wood, don't do the damage.
Well, fingers crossed they do. But no, tell us a bit about yourself. Give your channel a plug, and introduce yourself.
Yeah, so I'm Sharkey, a Newcastle fan. I run the Toonami TV YouTube channel, been doing it for about 4 years now. The channel does, well, I do have some vlogs from the match if and when I can get there. But at this moment in time with the lockdown, it's been very tough. But I do a lot of previews, so I build up the games, and I always like to go on other people's channels like yourself. So thanks for having me on first and foremost. And I like to do a lot of reviews, so talk about the game. I used to get a lot of fans on, but there's a lot of other channels that do that now, so I've kind of swept that aside. But yeah, I do a lot of breaking news, from Newcastle if there's any, and some FIFA content as well. So I just like to do pretty much a bit, of everything.
No, sweet. So straight away, your thoughts on your season so far? I mean, it's been bad for both of us, pretty much, hasn't it? Up and down.
I think for us it's been abysmal. I mean, there was so much promise, at the start of the season when you're signing the likes of Callum Wilson, you've got Jamal Lewis. Hendrick for me wasn't a great sign. I know he's one of your ex-players, but let's be honest, he's found it tough, to win the fans over. He's not really been the player that we've needed. He was a free transfer. He's been a bit of a passenger. It's not really worked out for him, and he's been getting in over the likes of Sean and Matty. For me, Ryan Fraser's, he was a decent signing, but he's been injured for the majority of the season. That's what it's been down to this season, I would say. A lot of injuries, losing Callum Wilson, losing the likes of ASM, were main threats, have been out for, at least half of the season. And also down to the coaching as well, Steve Bruce coming out with his excuses at the start of the season. We were playing five at the back and just losing games, against the likes of Brentford, in the Cup, losing to Sheffield United when they hadn't won a game all season. We're losing to the likes of, drawn with the likes of West Brom when we should actually win that game. And then, the 1-2 weeks ago against Brighton when we lose 3-0 and we don't turn up. And there's just been a lack of confidence and there's been a lot of negativity around the club. And, that's understandable, with Mike Ashley, the way he runs it. And I feel like because Steve Bruce is still here, I don't really give us much of a chance of staying up. But we've always got that chance because now that we've got Callum Wilson and ASM, ready to start on Sunday, we've got that chance. But if it had been a case of we didn't have those players back and we were playing you lot on Sunday, I wouldn't be, so confident. But the expectations this season were top 10. I don't know where they're getting that from. We're more of a mid-table club with Mike Ashley, and we're not even that this season. We're 17th. We deserve to be 17th. But then you could argue we should be in the bottom three. Fulham probably play better football than us. They've probably got a better manager, in terms of Scott Parker, Steve Bruce. He's trying to play down relegation. Scott Parker, he's geeing up his lads, to try and get the victories. And it wasn't for Fulham's sort of start to the season, and if it wasn't for our so-called start of the season, then I feel like we would be rock bottom. We probably would be down there with Sheffield United. I don't think there'll really be a chance of staying in this league. But there's always a chance now whilst we're still battling. But yeah, you were talking about your own form. I mean, from the outside looking in, I can kind of understand, why your form has been a bit up and down. But with the money that you spend, I feel like there's no real pressure, on your players. I don't think there's any real pressure on Sean. Obviously, you've got the new ownership in now. And, Burnley, I look at your side, I think you punch above your weight every season, but that's a good thing. It's
100%.
good, for the area. And I feel like, you've deserved that right to stay in the Premier League for the amount of seasons you've been in it. But, yeah, I feel like there's more pressure on us than what there would be Burnley.
Yeah, it's just, I've got to say, like, this year, you've sort of, I mean, Ashley put his hand in his pocket, give Bruce a bit of a kitty to spend. And he has done it wisely, like you say, in terms of bringing in Fraser and things, and it's just been a case of injuries and stuff. But you have got some big hitters, Almiron coming in from Atlanta, obviously a few seasons back now. But, he came in, hit the ground running, so to speak, and then, St. Maxim's been decent when he's been playing. But it's like again, like you say, you have got those big names, so I can understand why they've said 10th. On the basis of the technical ability of the players you've got in the squad. The Jeff Hendrick move was a strange one for me. Obviously, I think from our point of view, it was a case of there were so many changes at boardroom level and things weren't happening. Dash and riff-raffs between Dash and the board. So, contracts kind of got swept to one side, and I think he was going to be promised a new deal. He said he didn't want to play on the right wing, which was a bit of a funny one for me. He claimed straight to you, and I think his first game he played straight out on right wing.
He still does.
That's what I mean. I don't get it. He said he wanted to go for first team football in the centre of midfield. I don't know. He was definitely good. Thought he was going to get into that central midfield because he's not good enough.
He hasn't been good enough in either position. I mean, I've seen him in the centre of midfield. Doesn't do anything. Outright on the right hand side, doesn't do anything. Just as well, he's a free signing. Just as well he was a free signing. But for me, he was, I wouldn't say he was one of our worst ever signings, but it's like, where does he fit? Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, he's kept the likes of Matty and Sean out the side, who I think are, better midfielders than him. I mean, do you miss Jeff Hendrick? Do you want him back? I mean, I can always send a taxi for him.
No. I mean, to be fair, at first I was like, there were a lot of fans that gave him a lot of stick. He were quite probably a few fans scapegoat really, and then. He would crop up every now and again with a decent game, but everybody kind of just everything fell on his shoulders, so to speak. One missed pass and the stadium would just turn. It was just so. I can understand why he wanted out in the end, but because we were losing players like No Tomorrow and we weren't bringing anybody in, keeping Older Hendrick would have been a good option because he's an extra body, in the playing squad. But now I look at it and think. Would I have him back? Not a cat in hell's chance. At the end of the day, if Derby want him back, they can have him back if they want, but not us.
I mean, going forward, I just don't know where he fits. Do you know what I'm saying? He's probably going to be one of those sort of squad rotation players where he may get the odd game here and there, but I feel like lately Steve Bruce has finally seen some sense and dropped him, and he's, Sean Longstaff played the last game against Spurs, and he played well. He set up Joe Linton's goal to go 1-0 up, but. Yeah, I mean, I look at the lad, I feel like he's a yard off the pace. He's just not with it. And, yeah, I just can't see any positives in Jeff Hendrick right now. I mean, of course, all players can turn things around. You want them to do well, but he's been part of what's been a disastrous season. But I feel like Steve Bruce, takes a lot of the blame for that because at the end of the day, he's the manager. And it's not just down to Jeff Hendrick, though. At the same time, I feel like it's a squad collective. Like, they're not taking responsibility, for their actions. And I was saying to you off camera, if they're not going to play for Steve Bruce, at least play for the badge. But also, I look at the manager and I feel like he's out his depth. He knows that. And he's been playing players out of position. We've just mentioned that. And that's also cost us. You mentioned Almiron, who's meant to be, that number 10. He plays in that 4-2-3-1 role. Steve Bruce was using that at the start of last season. It was getting some results. And then he changed it. And he's one of those type of managers. He chops and he changes, and it's not going to suit everyone. And it's really reflected, this season in the results. You can blame injuries as much as you like, but if you're playing players out of position where they're not comfortable, you're not going to get the results that you want. And I feel like it's a collective of the squad not playing for them, players getting played out of position in injuries, and you just wonder, when's it going to end? And I feel like the only way it's going to end is if Steve Bruce leaves. But at the end of the day, we've got to focus on, these last 8 games of the season. And, I feel like Steve Bruce is quite fortunate in the sense that Mike Ashley, believes in him. But I can tell you 99.9% of the fan base don't believe in him anymore. He's totally lost it. And I feel like whatever happens at the end of the season, if we stay up or go down, he simply has to go.
Yeah, I think like we say there, Retro saying same. He agrees, 100%. I mean, changing it now is going to be a bit of a struggle, like you say, with the last 8 games. I think changing it now may be, probably a mistake to be fair. But Steve Bruce always strikes me as that sort of footballing dinosaur that still manages to creep up and manage to get these jobs. I mean, you could see his career not declining as such, but when he took that Sheffield Wednesday job, you could see certain managers after a certain period start to, falter down the leagues, a bit like players later on in their career. But it's gone back from Sheffield. It's similar to us, to be fair. I mean, we had Brian Laws at Sheffield Wednesday. He got sacked from Sheffield Wednesday and then took over after Owen Coyle. It was like, is it something to do with Sheffield Wednesday? Have they got something to do with Prem or what? I don't have a clue.
Steve Bruce has got no loyalty to anyone. He's that type of manager. If there's an opportunity, he will take it. He doesn't care about the rivalry. I mean, like I say, he was Sunderland manager, and that's not going to go down well with our fan base. And I don't think he's ever been welcomed from day one. I didn't want him. How can you go from Rafa Benitez, to Steve Bruce? And then last season, okay, fair enough, we'll finish 30th. But he calls him the mighty Rafa. That's quite a dig, really, when you think about it. Rafa had next to nobody to spend. Bruce has had a few million, and yet we've gone backwards. That's the difference with this squad. And I can say it 100% fact. We would be comfortable mid-table with Rafa in charge right now. We might even be 9th or 10th. Not saying top 7, but would easily be comfortable mid-table. But yeah, with this dinosaur of a manager, we're not going to go anywhere. And like I say, money talks. He's had the opportunity to walk away. He calls himself a Geordie, and yeah, he feels like he's the right man for the job. He's not the right man for the job. You know instantly when they're not the right man for the job when you see the results. 2 wins in 21 games. Yeah. Sum that up. 2 wins in 21 games. That's abysmal.
Yeah, 100%.
And you wonder how we are still in this league with that form. That is just ridiculous.
Yeah, it's the loyalty from upstairs as well, isn't it? Like, what's your thoughts on? I mean, you can ask every single Newcastle fan in the world. I think they'll tell you the same answer that Mark Ashley's. I think I need a bleep machine, but.
He's just a selfish, arrogant prick, basically, who has no thought, for the club's welfare, and it's just a case of, he's never really had the club at heart. People can say what they want from the outside, but if you're a Newcastle fan who bleeds the club, who wants the club, to move forward and do well, it's never going to go forward under Mike Ashley. He's been badly advised, since he's been. He's gone through plenty of, advisors, and they've just let him down, by the managerial, decisions, bringing in the likes of Steve McLaren, you can go back to the likes of Joe Kinnear, and I feel like it all stemmed down to when Kevin Keegan, was booted out for no reason, and because things were, go behind his back. But Mike Ashley, I mean, he's trying to sell the club, but how legit true that is, we'll never know. But there's a thing going on at the minute with the fan base trying to buy some sort of stake in the club, but we'll see where that goes. But as much as I want it to succeed, I can't be too sure at this moment in time, because you know what Mike Ashley's like, money talks, in this league. And if we stay up and we'll go back next season, then, things change, very, very quickly. But yeah, I mean, you've just gone through a new ownership yourself, haven't you? And I don't know your new owner, but I feel like, time will tell. But with Mike Ashley, you could instantly tell from the very get-go. For me, it was more like a toy rather than a football club. That's how owners treat football clubs these days, like toys. They don't care about the supporters. But yeah, it's become a nightmare, and the league positionings, they speak for themselves. And we've been relegated twice, and it's not to say that we won't be relegated for a third time, but like I say, fingers crossed that we don't get relegated. But I've said all season that the writing's been on the wall with this ownership and Steve Bruce in charge, as manager of your football club.
No, I totally understand. I mean, let's take it back to your last game. I mean, you put in a really good performance against Spurs. I mean, there was just that mad, 5 or 6 minutes after the goal that sort of kind of just shut up shop, not shut up shop, so to speak. You kind of just let the floodgates open, which they do say in football sometimes. You're more prone to conceding after scoring, but to concede two in such quick succession, not far after it, were a bit.
I feel like looking back at that game, at full time I was mixed emotions because I wasn't expecting anything from the game. I mean, it's Spurs, they've got quality, they've got Vinicius,
Yeah.
they've got Bale, they've got Kane, they've got Son, and you're always expecting the worst. On our current form at the time, it was 2 wins in 20 games. Now it's obviously 2 wins in 21, and we just can't find any confidence anywhere. But the way the lads just grafted, for the full 90 plus minutes, where's that been all season? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, why has it got to be against the so-called top 6 sides? Why can't we do it against the clubs in and around us? That's where we seem to struggle. When we play like sort of a Burnley, like yourself on Sunday, at Crystal Palace or anyone like that.
The game before Spurs, when you play Brighton, that was. I think that sums up just how up and down your season's been, so to speak, because you get trounced off a team literally that's in and around the area that a team you should be beating really, and then Spurs show up and you manage to grind out that result, which coming away from must have felt like a win.
Yeah, it does, because given the fact we were 1-0 up, when we went 2-1 down in the space of 6 minutes, I was annoyed, but I wasn't surprised at the same time, because I look back at the Crystal Palace game at home. We'll go 1-0 up, and then in the space of like 4 minutes, Crystal Palace go 2-1 up. So it was a very similar, scenario. For me, like, we mentally switch off, and that's our problem. We'll get caught ball watching, and we're not marking anyone, and there seems to be a lack of communication between the keeper and the defence, and that was the case between Dubravka and Emil Kraft. And if it wasn't for Dubravka and Kraft making that sort of error of judgment, then I feel like Kane wouldn't have scored that that goal, which set Spurs on their way. But we know how clinical Kane is. But second half, when Son come on, you're thinking, you're fearing the worst. We know how good he is. You can you can score a lot of goals, and we know that Spurs can always up the ante. But I feel like we didn't sort of just take it like we were. It 2-1 down, you're thinking, it's easy just to drop your heads and think, in our current form, we're going to get beat. Now there was that belief, from the lads just to keep going, create chances. Joe Linton, I mean, fair enough, he got his goal in the first half, but he could have had a hat-trick. In that match, he missed 2 massive sitters. If you look back on that, I mean, he's got to put them in. Almiron, he missed a big chance. But to see Willock, step up right at the end and, bundle it in to make it 2-2, I feel like that's what we deserved. That's the least we deserved, was a point from the game. I would have been disappointed if we'd not picked up anything from the match, but I wouldn't have been surprised at the same time. But, I get asked the same question this week. Have we turned a corner? At this moment in time, no, because for me, we'll only have turned a corner if we can grab 3 points on Sunday. But I know how difficult that's going to be against your lot. I would say you've got a decent record against us at Turf Moor. And we are the ones under pressure. We need the points more than what you do, even though you need the points to guarantee your safety for next season. If we can pick up 4 points from these 2 games, then I would say yes. But if we're only going to Turf Moor and playing for a draw and we get beat, then you feel, well, we haven't. Like, the points against Spurs, it's not really meant anything. It's got to mean something to me, and we've still got a long way to go. But bringing back the likes of Callum Wilson, for this game, we've got ASM playing potentially as well. We'll have to wait and see, but it's a case of, yes, it's a positive result looking back at it, but we could have had more.
Yeah, I mean, taking that Brighton result away, obviously your last 3 prior to that were draws. You had 1-1 against Villa, 0-0 West Brom, 1-1 with Wolves, and then they were lost to Man United. That's what I mean. It's turning them turning them points into 3. And I look back at ours. We've sort of had a similar run. I mean, obviously we chucked that lead away against Southampton. Weekend.
I watched the game.
That was horrible. That was horrible. We just crumbled. Especially we've had a 3-week break. With the international break, we weren't in the FA Cup. That break came at perfect time for us. But then sometimes, the thing that pees me off with the international break is you're constantly thinking, are we going to carry on with that same momentum we had from the Everton game where we won? Or are we sort of, we've been elsewhere, we've been in international duties, you kind of need to find that, it kind of needs to mesh again.
Yeah,
But
I feel like I feel like looking back at that game when I watched it, he's got off to the perfect start. He's grabbed a couple of goals on the road, but then when it's not your place and the opposition, the home side get 1 goal back, it's sort of squeaky bum time for yourselves, and you're thinking, oh right, we're fearing the worst. And once it's like 2-2, you're thinking, let's just not lose the game. Do you know what I mean? We've obviously gone 2-0 up, and then I feel like second half. I feel like he's my second best. If I'm ready to say, I feel like Southampton.
100%.
I feel like I think looking back at that fixture, whichever one won that game for me was safe. And Southampton, they wanted it more. They knew it was a home game against Burnley, where you're both in and around each other. They didn't want to be put in that relegation fight, and I feel like from your performance, I would say you probably at least deserved a draw. But then you could argue, well, you probably should have won the game from being 2-0 up. But that's the Premier League. It's so unpredictable, and we've been in those situations before where we've gone a couple of goals ahead, then we've let it slip. And I feel like if you had got that victory against Southampton, I'm not saying you would have. I'm not saying you're going to underperform on Sunday. That's not what I'm saying. But I feel like there wouldn't have been so much pressure on yourselves, and that would have gave us a bit more, to go for it. But now that it's now that you need that win on Sunday just to confirm your safety for next season, I feel like 36 will be enough.
That was my next question. I wondered what you'd say points wise, because usually they say 40 points is the average mark to stay in the Premier League, the benchmark. But it's not going to hit 40 points this year.
Nah, I think it's going to be 36, 37 because you can't see Fulham getting anywhere near 34, 35, 36 points unless they go on some ridiculous run, which can happen. They did it under Roy Hodgson many years ago where they looked and bother and they managed to do it. So, it can happen. But Fulham, for me, I look back at their game against Aston Villa. We were in the bottom three for about 10 minutes. And then all of a sudden they capitulated. They lost 3-1. And as much as Fulham battled for the manager, they just don't have enough quality. And that's very, very similar to us. Like, we've got quality, but we just don't use it to our advantage. And that's why Fulham have, a mathematical chance of catching us. And that's why we're in this predicament. If it wasn't for Steve Bruce messing around at the start of the season, we wouldn't be in this situation. The injuries have obviously cost us. But I feel like the destiny's in our own hands in terms of like whether or not we stay in the Premier League this season, because we've got the advantage on Fulham. It's up to us to to go out there and get the results. Do I believe we've got enough to get 36 points? I would say so, but looking at the fixtures, they look a bit rough. But that's not to say that we can't pick up the results. It all depends what the top six are doing, like what they're going for. And some of them are in Champions League, some of them are battling in Europa. So it depends where they're at. But I feel like you lot will be safe. I really, really do. I feel like you lot.
I think you lot will. I think you lot will stay up. I just think that there's a lot of fight. There is going to be some fight there. There has to be. I mean, you just need Bruce to kind of grip
take
the
it
game
by the scruff of the neck.
Yeah. Tell them dig deep. Kick them first. Let them know you're there early. Old school tactics. Go back to the. I mean, that's how we pretty much win games. It might, people slag Big Sam off and stuff like that, but the way he's got West Brom playing recently, they've just beat Chelsea 5-2 for Christ's sake. It's clearly working.
That's my
clearly
concern.
Works what he does.
That's my concern because they've got a winnable fixture on the weekend. If we lose to you lot, and if Fulham lose, if West Brom go on to 24 points, then they're going to think, wow, actually, we're only 5 points behind Newcastle. We've got a chance here, potentially staying in this league. We know what Sam Allardyce is about. He'll try and find a way of keeping a club in the. I feel like he's conceded a defeat already. You wouldn't expect that from Sam Allardyce, but I think he knows. No. I think he said it before the Chelsea game. But I look at your fixtures. Even if you were to lose to us on Sunday, not that you'd want that, you've got some winnable games. Like I look at, you've got the likes of Sheffield United. I believe Fulham. You should easily.
Yeah, we've got Sheffield United's our last game of the season at Turf.
I feel like you beat them. I know it would be a bit. I know they've got the freedom of like, oh well, they're down. But for you lot, there's plenty to play for. But I believe we'll both stay up. But for me, I feel like we're under more pressure because we've just dropped silly points. You go back to that Brighton game. I mean that taught me a lot about this side in terms of like we don't deserve to stay in this league. We don't deserve to be playing Premier League football because as much as Brighton are, they're not the best at home, but we make anyone look amazing. It's just a case of the way we threw the towel in. If you watch back at that game, it was just, it was embarrassing. And we couldn't have been any worse against Spurs. But talking about turning the corner for Sunday, for me, we just need to cut out those defensive errors. And if we can try and keep a hold of a lead, I feel like that's what we need to do on Sunday. Like, we need to take the lead first in order to try and set the rhythm of the game. Because if you go 1-0 up through Chris Wood or Ashley Barnes or, who's the other player I'm talking about now? Dwight McNeil, who I do actually highly rate. If one of them lots score, then I feel like it's going to be a long, long afternoon for us, because we're not the sort of side that come back on the road. So I feel like 1-0, it could be that sort of scoreline, but 1-0 ahead could be the sort of where it's at. Do you know what I mean? Whoever scores that first goal, sets the tone of the match.
Yeah, I've kind of said that myself, that it's going to be a 1-0 scrappy game. It could go either way. It could be one of those where it's like dying minutes of both teams throwing everything at it, and one team just gets that lucky break. It's just one of them. But going back to the game, obviously early on in the season, you gave us an ass beating.
Well, we've never really recovered from that one. That's when we had a good start of the season. We've got a 2-0 win against West Ham, and we know how their season's been. And then, we've got a draw against Spurs. I mean, we probably didn't deserve it, let's be honest. But, we managed to get a draw out that one. We got a 3-1 win against you lot. I think at the time we were like top 10. We were thinking, all right, okay, like this could be a decent season. We've got some good players. It's just unravelled. But in terms of the game, like watching it, I feel like we controlled it. I feel like, both halves, we were professional in our performance. We took the lead, but fair play to you lot, for getting back into the game. I think it was Ashley Westwood scored a fantastic goal. That was quality. I mean, 1-1, you're thinking, right, okay, for all the chances that we've had, typical Burnley, find a way, hard work inside. 1-1, you're thinking, we're going to let this slip, aren't we? Or it's going to end 1-1. But St. Maximin, you know what he's like, and Callum Wilson, the two of our better players, and they stepped up and won 3-1. I know Sean Dyche wasn't happy with a couple of things at the end. I was actually watching that game back the other day, and it was absolutely pissing it down. You could have seen Sean Dyche complaining, and Steve Bruce was just loving it. But I mean, like I say, that's where you lot had a really, really bad start of the season. I think you were in the bottom 3 as well, and people were sort of writing you off to get relegated. To be fair, I wasn't one of them. I'm thinking Burnley always turn up second half of the season. And again,
we were 19th after that game. After that game, we were 19th and we still hadn't got a point on the board. And that was October. Right. It was madness, absolute madness. But I was looking at the all-time record between us, and it's level. We've both won 43 games and drawn 21. So
something's got to change on Sunday. Something has got to change because well, obviously I'm hoping it's going to go in our favour, but I feel like typical Newcastle, they'll not make it easy, Steve Bruce. But he went 5 at the back against Spurs, but I just hope he doesn't go 5 at the back against you lot. I feel like we need to play 4 at the back. We need to try and match you, because your work rate is unreal. I would say for the players that you've got, like for what your manager does, I feel like he doesn't get a lot of the credit he deserves. Sean Dyche, people say, oh, it's this, that, and the other, like terrible football. To be honest with you, you just get the job done, and that's what you've got to do in this league. You've got to get the result hook by crook. And Burnley, you do it. You don't have a lot of money, but I don't know how you seem to do it. But it's down to your manager. It's down to your training. It's down to how they're coached. And that's the difference between Sean Dyche, I would say, and Steve Bruce. One manager knows how to coach, and the other one doesn't.
Yeah, I mean, I look at other managers. I've been on a few Arsenal podcasts, and they're all Arteta out and things like that. And I kind of think Dyche doesn't get that recognition that he actually deserves, like you say. Could he manage a top 6 side? Yeah, I'd say he probably could. But then, I mean, you look at Arteta, he's gone in at Arsenal because he used to be a former player. It's his first job. I can understand why he's gone there, because he's had that sort of grounding through Pep at City. And then, it's just obviously not worked. You sort of associate Arsenal with playing this like sort of Andy Tate commenting it, that Barca style of play. But you kind of got all that going on. And you kind of expect that, and he's been thrust into it and gone, right, keep that going, and it's obviously not worked. But it's like you say, we've got that. We play we do a Mark Bassett, play a 4-4-2. You can just imagine Dyche having team sheet on back of a fag packet. It's honestly.
Do you know what though? When I think of Burnley, I just think, like, from the outside looking in, an honest bunch of hard-working players that want to give it all for the badge, that want to give it all for the manager, and when I look at Sean Dyche, he comes across as like a polite, honest, hardworking guy. Like some of the things he comes out with in his press conferences, he's very he doesn't give a lot away, but
No,
he
no.
understands that what it takes to to win games in this league. And yeah, okay, 4-4-2, yeah, it's very routine, but if it's going to get you the results, if it's going to achieve better things for the club going forward, then that continue with with what you know, and ignore all the so-called backstabbers in the background who just seem to like dig you out all the time. But at the end of the day, it's kept you in the Premier League, and for what he's done at your football club, he's sort of grown the football club in the sense that you've got new things in as part of your ground. You've upgraded a lot of stuff. I've seen on your YouTube channel, and I feel like as a football club, you're going forward each and every season. Like you get a lot of criticism by your rivals, but who
Yeah,
doesn't?
yeah.
By Sunderland, but I feel like a club like Burnley is just starting to lead the way now. In Lancashire, and that's probably a big statement to say, but
Oh
but
no, I'll take that.
no, you are, because you've been in the Premier League, for I would say is it 4 or 5 seasons now. You
Yeah,
are
yeah,
really,
yeah.
you have pretty much rubber stamped your place in the Premier League, and everyone knows about you now. So if people think Burnley, oh yeah, Premier League club, like that's what it's come down to. Whereas like Burnley, I think used to be like a regular sort of, was it second division sort of
Oh
side,
yeah.
championship.
I always mid-table championship side, and it sort of always felt like that. Growing up, me and a couple of mates always used to say, because we'd lose games around Christmas all the time, and it's like, right, is there some sort of, right, the finances aren't good, we can't quite get promoted yet. Let's just drop a few games on quiet and stay where we are, maintain that sort of business model. I don't know, everything goes through your head when you're a kid and you think of all sorts. Why do we seem to falter at that one specific time? But
But the thing is, though, it's not about having loads of finances, though. It's about having the right
yeah,
structure in place. You've got obviously Sean Dyche, but you've got to give credit to your previous manager who got you promoted. It was a 10. Was it 2009? 2009.
yeah, Owen Coyle in
Yeah,
2009, yeah.
like he set the benchmark for Burnley Football Club to think you can actually play in the Premier League. It doesn't matter like what your squad looks like. It doesn't matter about how much it costs each and individual player, but it's about buying into the philosophy of the manager. Like if the players buy into it and the supporters buy into it, then every club, it doesn't matter what league you're in, whether you're
No,
Championship, League One, League Two, anyone can get into the Premier League. You look at Bournemouth as well. Like they must
yeah,
take
yeah,
some inspiration from Blackpool, from yourselves, that it can happen, and not just about staying in the Premier League for one season. You can actually stay there, for more than one
yeah,
season. Like Burnley, you've had a lot of years now in the Premier League, and look back at Huddersfield Town, they had a couple of seasons in it as well. So I feel like Sean Dyche as well. Like he's just taking your club, sorry. Step by step. It's going forward each and every season. I would say it doesn't matter like where you finish as long as you stay in the Premier League. It's still progressing. I still believe like
yeah.
he's
I
still a
think
work in progress.
everyone says that we're still on that progressive wave. We need to keep riding it. We need to keep going and
Yeah.
going until we get to a point where we're not going to be that sort of club that chucks money here, there, and
No,
everywhere.
no,
There's a player that we could look at that's worth 15 million, and we'll
no.
offer six. We'll offer half of that, and we'll probably lose him. He'll
Do you
probably
know? Do you
go
know, do you know what it
elsewhere.
is though? Do you know what it is when I look at Burnley, and you may have different expectations to me, but if I'm looking at Burnley from the outside looking in, if you could, I know you got that seventh place finish, which you weren't expecting. You got it. Europa
No,
League.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
fair play. Yeah,
really
fair play.
punching then.
But and it sounds really cliche and boring, but if you can grab mid-table every season and keep it and stay in the Premier League, which is important, for Lancashire, it's important for for Burnley as a town. I
Oh
feel
yeah,
like that's what it should be. Like if you can finish comfortable mid-table, like say 12th, 13th, I think you'll take it. Get a good League Cup, a good FA Cup run. It's possible, but maybe try and get into that top seven. But I feel like for your stature of club, like that would be good. Like just to not be in a relegation battle. Do you know what I mean? Like I feel like you
yeah,
do enough every season anyway. Like that's why you're on 33 points and why we are on 29 is because you're a club always progressing. Like you're going forward. You've got players that they know their strengths. They know what to do. And Sean Dyche, he knows where you're at, and he's got the experience as well of this league. He knows how to battle relegation. But when I look at him, he's a sort of manager who wants to take your club forward. Do you know what I'm saying?
yeah,
But
yeah,
we'll wait and see in the summer of your new ownership of where they're going to take it from here. But I feel like from the outside looking in, it looks positive. Even though you say your season's been up and down, I guess you would take 33 points with your games you got left to fancy yourselves to stay in the Premier League, but not just that, kick on maybe towards 12th, 13th, something like that.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's doable. It's manageable to get there. I said 13th at the beginning of the season, but whenever I've been on other podcasts and things like that, I've always said 17th and above, and I'm happy.
Yeah,
I'm happy with that. You don't
There
want to
isn't.
be in that dogfight,
No,
but you want
no.
to be in the league. So that's why I think I look at it as 17th and above. Sorry, you're still well in. You're still in the Premier League. And you can only, go on from there. But
Yeah,
it's like
I
you say,
mean,
I totally agree. 12th, 13th is mad.
I,
I'll take that.
I look at our sort of stature of club, and we used to be, back in the day, of the old Keegan era, the entertainers or Bobby Robson were always competing, in that top seven. But I look at the club now. Why can't we not be that club that can, get into the top 10? We're not
Yeah,
asking for
no,
like
I
sort of
agree.
top
I
seven.
totally agree.
We get proclaimed to be like, oh, we demand this, we demand that, and we've seen it from Sky Sports pundits and Talk Sport, like, oh, we want this, we want that. Every football fan just wants a little bit of hope that we can actually do something. But with Mike Ashley, we're going backwards. And you look at clubs like Sheffield Wednesday, Nottingham Forest, these sort of clubs, they've never come back. Even Blackburn, your rivals, have not come back, and we're in grave danger of doing that as well. And that's why we're not happy with being 17th, because with Steve Bruce, there was a chance to get rid of him, during the international break, and we didn't do it. Let's be honest, 2 wins in 20 games, losing to Brighton 3-0, and being so close to that relegation zone, you have to dismiss your manager, as far as I'm concerned. And we had a chance to do that, we didn't. I feel like now it's too late. We're just going to have to stick with him, and listen. The board they'll have to deal with the consequences at the end of the season, whether we stay up or go down. But for me, there needs to be a massive clear out of this football club.
No, it's hard to see from the outside, because you are such a massive club. Everybody. The season we got promoted in 2009 was the season I think you came down, and
Yes,
I was gutted. I was absolutely gutted, because St James's Park. I'd said it for years. Whenever there were cup draw on TV, I was
yeah,
wanting Newcastle away. If it wasn't Newcastle away, it was either some shitty minnow team, just for a really good away day out. But prior to 2014, we'd not played you since before 2014. The last time we played was the 19th of March, 1983.
yeah. It
That was
was
the last time.
two decades ago, basically.
Yeah,
Do you know what I mean? It was just, I don't know. We've not played each other often, because we've spent a lot of the time in the Premier League. But that one time that we got relegated in 2009, which with the side that we had, which should never have been relegated, but
no,
we
no.
go through with 3 managers in one season, you're about it. But I was a bit good in a sense, because you were sort of like a new club that I'd never seen before in the Premier League. I'm thinking, oh, we could have been playing Burnley, but what happens if we get promoted, which we did do, and you go down? You know what I mean? It's just, but we've always had some good battles, over the years in the Premier League, and hopefully, fingers crossed, long may it continue into next season. But we can't promise anything. Nobody knows, where anyone's going to be, in these last 8 games of the season. But we've got to just look after ourselves now. But so Sunday is going to be so tough, because we know that we're the ones under pressure. The onus is on us to try and get the 3 points. I know, like I say, you need it as well for your reasons, to be safe. But I feel like there's a lot of pressure on I would say at board level. There's pressure on the manager. There's pressure on the players going into the game. They don't need reminding of how tough, but how important this game is on Sunday. And I feel like it's going to be. I'm not going to say it's going to be a classic. I hope it is. I hope it's going to be a watchable game. There's going to be goals flying in, but I do fear the worst if we lose this on Sunday.
It's definitely going to make for an interesting one. I was going to ask you about memories of previous meetings, but like we say, we've only had since like 2014.
Yes, I can tell you
pretty
one.
much.
I can tell you one, but it wasn't of good reading. I went down to Turf Moor for the first time in 2017 under Rafa. We lost 1-0, and ever guess who scored? You'll probably remember his name. I've just been talking about him at the start of the podcast. The one who left last season to join us.
Oh, Jeff Hendrick. Yeah, it were. It were tapping. We're tapping at back post, if I remember rightly.
Oh man, honestly, it was just one of those weird away day experiences. Getting stuck on the motorway as well. The police escort were there, and we had loads of problems. But to be fair, like Turf Moor, obviously I've been there myself, and I've seen how compact your stadium is. It's tight, and that's what we're going to be dealing with on on Sunday afternoon. But it was a nighttime game. Jeff Hendrick scored, and then going to the future 4 years later, we'll go and sign him, or 3 years later, and he doesn't do anything. But memorable one at home, I would say the 3-3. I would say, just because the fact you battled. We probably should have won the game, let's be honest. But then you could argue you should have won the game. There was plenty of chances, and yeah, it goes down in a bit of history in a sense. 6 goals and New Year's Day. It's kind of what you want, don't you, after Christmas on New Year's
Yeah,
Day?
of course you do.
Everyone's buzzing around Christmas. Your Boxing Day fixtures, then you got one in the middle on the 28th, 29th, and then you've got one on New Year's Day. I mean, Christmas classic, New Year's Day classic, and that's what we got on New Year's Day. 6 goals, and yeah, for Burnley as well. You would see a big stadium as well, a lot of fans, and the fact that you've scored 3 goals on the road. As I said, I think you should win the game if you score 3 on the road, but. Yeah, it was a real classic. But you never know. We could get a classic on Sunday, and hopefully it could be for our side. But we just don't know really.
No, so it makes for a tough one. So, what's your predicted lineup for Sunday then? If you was to pick the Newcastle side, who would you go for?
Right. Okay. So Steve Bruce went with the 5-3-2. I want to change it to 4 at the back, so I'm going to go with the 4-2-3-1. He doesn't seem to be picking that formation for some reason. I don't know why. It suits all of the players. He has previously been going like a 4-3-3. Yeah. Right, okay. So in goal, I'll go Martin Dubravka. Left back, I'm going to go with Paul Dummett. He did play sort of a central role in the game against Spurs when we were playing 3 centre-backs. Right back, I'm going to go with Javier Manquillo. Hopefully he can start putting those balls into the box, swinging them in. My 2 centre-backs, I'm going to go with Captain Jamal Lascelles. And alongside him, I'm going to go with Kieran Clark. And then the 2 CDMs. First of all, I'm going to go with Sean Longstaff. I feel like he had a good game, against Spurs, and a bit of confidence there.
Yeah.
And then alongside him, I'm going to go with Joe Willock. He'd be full of confidence. You got the winning goal. I wish it was the equalising goal against Spurs. I mean, it might as well have been the way we played second half. You got that equalising goal. He'll be full of enthusiasm. He'll want to go again. So I think he'll like going there. The number 10, I've gone with Miguel Almiron. As long as he's played in that position and he gets the service, then he could be a real threat to your defence on Sunday. Left mid, I have gone with Joe Linton. He was played sort of a 4-4-2 against Spurs, but I feel like he plays better out wide left, and he can cut in. You can try and set up Callum Wilson or ASM, or it could be Almiron. It all depends who he picks, but I feel like he's played better there. And then on the right hand side, I've gone with Alan St. Maximin. You'll know about him. What he did here at St. James's. He'll be full of tricks. He's lightning quick, and he'll put your defence under pressure. But as long as he's not tracking back and he's at the right place at the right time, then he can do his damage. And then up front, who else? Callum Wilson. Hopefully, fingers crossed, he'll be back to this game. He did put on his Instagram that he's ready for a particular game. And Steve Bruce was asked about it last week before the Spurs game. When's Callum Wilson going to be available? And he said, he should be available for the game on Sunday, which is probably bad news for you lot. He's got 10 goals this season. He scored against you lot at St James's. And how we're going to need him as well, between now and the rest of the season, because without his goals, I feel like we'd be bottom 3. We wouldn't have any fighting chance of staying up. I feel like Fulham, would be around 16th, 17th in the league. But I feel like that's the strongest lineup I could possibly go with. You could make some changes, like bring in Matt Ritchie if you want, Jacob Murphy, who's played very well. But I feel like if you lot are tiring out in the second half and it's still 0-0, you can bring on Matt Ritchie for a bit of quality. Yeah. He was man of the match, against Spurs, and it's strange to drop him.
Didn't he assist both? Didn't he assist both goals?
Yeah, he did. But I feel like with Callum Wilson coming back into the side, and Joe Linton scoring against Spurs, and with ASM, playing out wide in a 4-2-3-1, I feel like that's probably the best side, that we could go with. Yeah. You can mix and match it. At the end of the day, nobody knows what Steve Bruce is going to go with, but I'm hoping it's not a 5. I'm not honestly. I'm not hoping that it's going to be a 5 at the back, but I'm hoping it's going to be the 4-2-3-1. But we need a strong start. That's what we need on Sunday. But it all depends how both managers go for it technically.
Yeah, I think we're obviously just simple as typical 4-4-2. Pope in goal, Lawton at right back, Ben Mee and Tarkowski at centre. I'm not sure whether Eric Peters will play because his wife's just given birth. And his wife's just given birth, so whether he sits out. So yeah, massive congratulations to him and his missus. So I don't know whether Charlie Taylor will be back for that. If not, I don't know whether we'll have to push maybe Ben Mee to the left. I'm not sure. I mean, he's played there before. Central midfield has got to be Ashley Westwood and Josh Brownhill. Goodmanson on the right if he's fit. McNeil on the left, standard. And I think he'll go with the same front 2 against Southampton in Wood and Vidra. Because these past couple of games we've been pressing, So
I feel like you have to though. You've got to take a
yeah,
risk. Like, at the end of the day, it's your Premier League status on the line, and that's something that we need to do. It's something that we haven't been doing in recent games. But against Spurs, if you look back at the stats, by just pushing that further forward and making something happen, then you got a chance of scoring goals. If you know where I'm coming from, and
yeah.
I feel like I'm worried with Ashley Barnes playing because he's got a good record against us. It goes way back to when he played for Brighton. He played us in the FA Cup, and who else? Ashley Barnes as well. Chris, that both very good, strikers on the day. I mentioned that in my preview. If we give them the time of day, if we give them the space, they're ruthless, and that's what you need.
I think Barnes is still out. I think Barnes is still out with injury, so you might have, got away with that one.
Well, you look at Chris Wood though; he's still, a clinical finisher on his day, and
Yeah,
I look at Dwight McNeil. I feel like he's a promising, player who, I'm not disrespecting Burnley in any way, but I feel like he'll definitely go to the next level. I could say that with St. Maximin,
yeah.
Wilson. That with this ownership, they'll move on in their careers, and I feel like he's definitely one for the future. He's playing, in the England under 21s as well, so he's a real prospect, and I watched the goal back, against Everton. I mean, if he could do that against Everton, against our shaky defence, he'll probably do the same. But yeah, you have got some real threats, and I'm wary of what you can you bring to the game on Sunday. But it's how we go about it, and defensively we need to just cut out the silly errors that that we're making. And I'm sure Sean Dyche and your team will have done their research on that, and they would have looked back at the Spurs game where it went wrong. And hopefully, if Steve Bruce has any knowledge of the game, you would have looked back, what happened. Because even if you get a positive result, you've still got to pick out some of the negatives in order to move forward.
Yeah,
That's
of course you have.
So yeah.
Of course you have. You've got to be constructive in, there's got to be method to your madness sort of thing. Who do you think Burnley should look out for on Sunday? Who do you think the danger man is?
Well, I'd say there's about three, to be honest. I would say if Callum Wilson gets the service, which is very, very important, he's a goal scorer. He can finish, and he's ruthless, and that's what we've missed. But he has to be at the right place at the right time. Your defence has to be on it. Whoever's marking him, needs to be on it. They need to be, mentally switched on. St. Maximin, we've discussed him in this podcast. What he did at St. James's, how he just twists and turns. Plays inside out, how he just cuts in and he can just flash one in. Do you know what I mean? That's what he does.
Yeah,
That's what Callum does. That's what St. Maximin does. He just hits it like a flash and it's past your keeper. Before you know it, and he's got lightning there, quick pace, which is what we've lacked. In recent weeks, and since he's come back in against Spurs, we looked a completely different side. Almiron as well, in that number 10, it's all about the service for us, and he'll be a key man to watch out for, because if he gets some good service, then you'll get opportunities. He did against Spurs. He was probably unfortunate not to score a couple of goals in that match, and it's funny I'm saying that against Spurs, who have a lot of quality, but on the day we have some good players. We have players that can really hurt sides, but it's how the manager goes about it. It's how he coaches them during the week, and we've got to have a game plan, and we've not had that for probably over 75% of this season. I was just about to ask the same question to you guys, like what players should we watch out for on Sunday? I'll probably pick them out, to be fair, because you've gone 4-4-2.
Yeah, I'd say if Dwight McNeil is allowed to run at your defence, then I think obviously his sort of supply, aerial threat by whipping balls into the box, it's got to be quite key, especially to the way we play, having two big forwards up front usually. But at the moment, I don't know. Like I say, I look back at the Everton game, I look back at the Southampton game. Yeah, okay, we have been pumping balls long, like we are classed as pretty much a long ball team. But I'm going to go for somebody different. I'm going to say Josh Brownhill.
Is he the one who you signed from Preston?
No, he was at Bristol City. He was at Bristol City.
I'm sure he used to play for Preston right back in the day.
He might have done. I think
he's been on the ground.
Yeah. I mean, he's up there on the interceptions. I think he's second to Jan Bednarek at Southampton. But I don't know. I can see a goal coming from him at some point. Not saying it's Sunday, but it's coming in the next couple of games. I think. He looks sharp. He looks fit. He's just come out and announced he's gone vegan. So don't know whether that's going to make any difference at all. But
they could turn fortunes.
Yeah. Well, fingers crossed. What's your the penultimate question? Your score prediction?
Yeah, do you know what? I'm going to go 2-1 Newcastle. Of course, it's going to be a difficult game. It's probably going to be a cagey one, isn't it? Nobody wants to make a mistake because one mistake, could cost a lot in terms of
Yeah,
Premier League statuses and in the remaining 8 games, or even actually 7 after this one. Yeah, I feel like we need the points now because as much as it was a good performance against Spurs, we probably should have got the win. But I'll take the points. But it's only a good point if we can get 3 points against you lot on a Sunday. But I'm under no illusions how tough the game's going to be. I'll take a point if we play really bad. Of course, you would, on the road. But I feel like with the fixtures coming up, we've got West Ham next week. That's going to be a challenge. And then we've got the likes of Arsenal. We've got Manchester City, Liverpool. Yeah, it's daunting just looking at the remaining fixtures that we've got. And then the last 2 games are, Sheffield United at home and Fulham, as they're predicting, is going to be, a Premier League shootout. But I don't want it to come down to that. I want us to be, safe by the time, Sheffield United, or even if we can get safe after Sheffield United and relegate Fulham with 1 game to go, I'll take that. Do you know what I mean? I'd rather have that than, what's gone before. But yeah, I feel like I don't feel like we're going to keep a clean sheet in this one. But, if Callum Wilson starts and ESM plays, and we'll get all the best players playing, if they're all on cue, if they're all on it on Sunday, and we'll go for it, and Steve Bruce doesn't go far at the back, I feel like we've got every chance. But yeah, what about yourself? I'm sure you're going to go the opposite way.
Yeah, I'm going to have to say we're going to sneak a 1-0. It's just been what we've kind of, I don't know, it's been seen as a bit of a statement really recently that we seem to grind out those 1-0s. I mean, the season we got into Europe, it was because we kept winning 1-0. It'd be that lucky break. And then, I don't know, we seem to do really well at sitting on that.
Well, Leicester did it, you see, back in 2016-17 when they just kept winning, kept winning games. Off 16 season, yeah, the 1-0, 1-0, 1-0, 1-0, but you just got to get the job done. I mean, don't get me wrong. I feel like there will be goals in the game, but I would take a 1-0, if it got offered to me. But I want it to try and be a better game on the eye, so to speak. There's going to be goals and it's watchable, but yeah, I'm under no illusions like how difficult it's going to be, and I'm sure both managers will have their their mind games going into it. But if you want to do a reaction on Sunday night, I don't mind. Even if we get beat, I don't mind talking about the game. If you want to do a reaction.
Yeah. No, I was debating doing match reactions as well because it's not something I thought previews, etc. I need to, delve into this StreamYard a bit more, get backgrounds and logos and things like that. So I'm going to, delve into that in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, because I think the game finishes around 2:00. So I mean, I'll be available like after the match. I'll do my review as I always do on my channel, and then maybe about 3:00, maybe if you're available around 3, 3:30, whatever. I could do it. We could talk about the game and then see what went right, see what went wrong. But yeah, it's something I'm thinking about doing on my own channel. Just maybe get an opposition fan on. We'll talk about the game and stuff, and because it's all good building up the game, but like if you can't talk after a game, because some fans don't like to because they've lost it and they don't like it, But for me, it is what it is. Do you know what I mean? I'm kind of resigned to our season, but yeah, hopefully fingers crossed you and get the 3 points. But do you know what? I wouldn't be surprised if it ends a draw. That's what everyone's predicting.
No, I totally agree. It's going to be so scrappy that even if it is 1-0, I don't know whether it's going to go either way. But because
you know what, though?
I'm of the Burnley side, I'd have to take the 1-0, obviously.
Oh, of course, it'll be like a 0-0 or a 1-1, and our goal will probably come off Steve Bruce's arse, pretty much. So,
well, I don't know what's bigger, his arse or his head.
Both. But but no, honestly, I say I'm looking at the fixtures coming up. You know what? Listen, I would take a point at Turf Moor at any stage of the season because I know how tough the place is, and I've been myself. But in our predicament, it's like you would say the same if you won 29 points and we won 33. You would come to St James's Park, you'd think we need the 3 points. Do you know what I mean? We're not that. We used to be a ruthless side back in the day. Everyone used to think, oh, St James's is it's a real fortress. We're not a fortress under this manager.
It's a tough one. It's good. It's definitely going to be one for a good watch. Hopefully, it's not 2 managers that are going to say neither of us need to lose. A point's good enough. It's negative to look at it like that. Fingers crossed, obviously for yourselves that you get the win. For us, we've got our fingers, toes. All six fingers crossed.
Do you know what it is? I said it. Even if you don't beat us, you'll not be happy with it. But you look at your fixtures coming up. You've got winnable games, and for me, I feel like you just need a win and maybe a possible draw just to rubber stamp that status for next season. But I feel you'll do it. I feel like the onus is on us though, because we've still got to make up 4 points on yourself, and we're meant to be in and around you at this moment in time. You've got that gap, and we need to try and cut it. But yeah, do you know what it is though, right? For you, there's no pressure on you because you don't have to look at the Fulham game. You probably do in a sense, but even if Fulham win, you've still got that 4 point gap. Do you know what I'm saying? And Fulham still they've got work to do, whereas we're only 3 points off Fulham. Yes, we've got the game in hand, but it means nothing if you can't get the points. Do you know what I'm saying? People say you'd rather have the point on the board. That's correct.
Yeah.
But I'm hoping that Wolves can do a favour. But if we go in the bottom three for at least 48 hours at least, it's our own fault because the writing's been on the wall all season. We've had chances and we've just blown it. So I'm hoping that they can that Wolves can do a favour. But I'm hoping that the scenario is we can beat you, be a point behind, but also be 6 points clear of Fulham, and then you could be 7 points clear, and then hopefully try and get some wins elsewhere and just make sure Fulham have got the work to do. But you look at Brighton as well. At Brighton, they're not out with it either. They're only a point behind you.
Yeah.
We beat you. We go level on points with Brighton, but they'll be 16th on goal difference. So I still feel like there's a lot to play for.
It's going to be massive. It's definitely going to be a big one. Cheers for everything.
No problem, you're welcome.
Where can people find your stuff?
Yeah, so Toonami TV. You can find us on Instagram. You can find us on Twitter as well. And hopefully, like I say, after the game, we'll be back on your channel and we'll talk the match. But if you like the Newcastle content, I mean, you'll be a bit depressed watching it, to be fair, because us. But listen, I do previews, I do reviews of the game and some FIFA content where I can, and just keep the content flowing while I can, and hopefully it's not championship content next season. But yeah, if you want to head over and watch the content, if you like it, subscribe. If you don't, then it's fine.
Well, everyone watching, please go head over, give him a subscribe. Obviously, what you're on now is.
Oh, do you know what? It's a slow growing channel at the minute. I started back in 2017. I've got 3,600. But that's the thing with YouTube at the minute. You just you make the videos. And I feel like YouTube is one of them as well. And obviously you're new on the scene, aren't you? So hopefully fingers crossed. And once do you go? Are you a season ticket holder?
Not at the moment. Not at the moment.
Do you have plans to go next season?
I'm a bit skeptical, just with the kids and everything else. They're growing up now. They're on about coming on as well. So it gets a bit more. Your pockets need to be a bit longer, don't they? So that's true. But that's always a one that helps. If you go to the matches and stuff, you do vlogs and stuff, or if you can collaborate with other fans, it always helps. But I'm sure your channel will grow in time, and you'll reach that 100 subscriber mark, and you never know. You go from there, but. No, it's been a pleasure to talk to you, mate, and glad you reached out. If you ever want to come on again, for when we play in the future, hopefully it could be next season. Fingers crossed it's next season. Fingers crossed. But thanks everybody for watching. Remember, do like, subscribe, follow all our socials at Cricket Field End or The Cricket Field End on Instagram and Facebook. Just one last thing. I want to wish my own daughter a happy 4th birthday and happy also birthday. A happy retirement to Stephen Defoe.